Okay, this is the Unit 10 test review. Again, remember you get 5 bonus points if you turn it in the day of the test. Completed. Alright, so this whole unit was about rational functions, so adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, and then solving. So we're going to start off real basic. So on this first one here, all they really want you to do is they want you to factor and then just cancel out. So on this one, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to get 12 and combine to get 8. That's going to be 6 and 2. And on the bottom, I'm looking for two numbers that will multiply to get negative 18 and then combine to get 3. So that's going to be 6 and 3. So plus and minus. And then I'm looking for something that's the same on the top and the bottom. So top, bottom. So the answer is x plus 2 over x minus 3. Okay, so on number 4, that's where we're going to start adding and subtracting. So remember, when you're adding and subtracting, you have to have that common denominator. Okay, so for instance, on number 4, I notice that there's a 6 and a 2. So for my common denominator, I know the number will just be 6. But then I need to make sure that each one has an x and each one has the y. So I'm going to multiply this by 3y. That's how I get the 6, and I also have an x and a y. And then this one will need an x, and now they're the same. And then whatever I do on the bottom, I do to the top. And so what I now have is I have 7x over 6xy plus 15y over 6xy. And then those cannot be combined, so I just rewrite it with the common denominator underneath. Okay, on number 5, again, I need a common denominator. So if this has n plus 1, this also has to have n plus 1. And if this has n minus 7, this also has to have n minus 7. And again, whatever you do on the bottom, you have to do on the top. And then same thing over here. So on this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the common denominator down here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm only going to focus on the numerator right now. So if I only focus on the numerator, I'm only focusing on this part right here. Just that. So I'm going to write out 7n times n minus 7 plus 8n plus 1. And then I'm just going to start distributing. Okay, that gives me 7n squared minus 49n plus 8n plus 8. And then I'm just going to start combining what's alike. There's nothing to combine here, so 7n squared. I can combine this, and I get negative 41n, and then plus 8. Alright, same thing on number 6. Again, you have to have that common denominator. So this has 2 b's. This already has 1. So you'll notice that this one just needs one more b. So times b. Now it's b squared. And whatever I do on the bottom, I do to the top. So my common denominator is b squared. So here I'm going to have 3 over b squared plus 1b over b squared. And then if I write that with just the common denominator, I'm going to have b plus 3 on top. Okay, on number 9, you'll notice that all of a sudden I have a subtraction sign. So the number one thing when you're dealing with a subtraction is, of course, you always have to make sure if there's a common denominator. But we're also going to have to make sure here is that I distribute that negative from the very beginning. So I need to make sure I put parentheses around that and then distribute it. So what I now have, I know my common denominator is going to be 2r minus 5. So now I'm just going to combine the top. So I've got 5r plus 6 minus 2r minus 3, because each of these signs flip because of the negative. Alright, so if I start combining everything, I end up with 3r plus 3. Now this can actually be simplified a little bit more. I can pull out a factor of 3, and then r plus 1. So that's my numerator along with my common denominator. Alright, if y'all take a look at number 7, on 7 here again I have a subtraction sign, but I also have one of these special patterns. So remember, when you see that special pattern, what you really have there is you have an x plus 5 and an x minus 5. Well, this already has an x minus 5. So the other thing that it needs is it needs to have the x plus 5. And again, whatever you do on the bottom, you do to the top. Okay, so my common denominator is going to be x plus 5, x minus 5. And then again, I'm only focusing on that numerator. So on top there, I have 2x plus 7 minus 3x plus 5. Now, I got to make sure that I distribute that negative 3. So if I do that, what I now have is, and I'm going to have my work go over this way, I'm going to have 2x plus 7 minus 3x minus 15. I'm going to combine what's alike. I've got a 2x and a negative 3x, so that gives me negative x. Then I also have a minus 8 because of the 7 and the negative 15. Now, I'm going to do something called factoring out the negative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out that negative, and then all these are going to flip. This will become positive, and that will become positive. So that's my numerator. Okay, so that's all adding and subtracting. And again, the main thing with it is you've got to have that common denominator, and then whatever you do on the bottom, you got to do on the top. Okay, now we're going to get into multiplying and dividing. So the first part we're going to do is going to be dividing. And the thing you need to remember that is you always have to factor. You have to look for every place you factored. So when I taught my class, I had them go through and highlight where they can factor. So there's one place. And then because I'm dividing, I'm going to do keep, change, flip. So this will eventually flip. So I'm going to keep this, and there's no factoring there. I'm going to change that division to multiplying, and then I'm going to flip these. So I'm now going to have 4n on the bottom. And then also, if you notice, this 8 and 48 can both be divided by 8, so I'd be left with n minus 6. So I have 8 and then n minus 6. Okay, so again, it doesn't matter where these things are as long as one is on the top and one is on the bottom. So top, bottom, top, bottom. So the only thing that's left is 8. So that's your answer. Okay, let's look on the back now. So on number 14, we're multiplying. So really the big thing with multiplying and dividing is you want to make sure you get as many parentheses as possible. So I'm looking at this, and I know I have 2 sets of parentheses there, but I also know I can factor here and I can factor here. So I'm going to just get as many parentheses as I possibly can now. So I've got x minus 7 on top. I'm going to have 2x plus 5 down here. Okay. And then down here is another special pattern. So square root of 49 is 7. So x minus 7x plus 7. And then this right here, what 2 numbers will multiply to get 5 and combine to get 6? That's x plus 5 and x plus 6. Or I'm sorry, x plus 1. Okay, and again, it's all about top and bottom. So I'm going to start canceling out on the top and bottom. So top, bottom. I cannot cancel that one out because it's not paired. It has to be paired, so that's a pair. And then top, bottom. So what I have left is I have x plus 1 over x plus 5 and x plus 7. So that's the multiplying and dividing. All right, on number 16, remember, anytime you see this and it doesn't have like that, you can't see the numerator and denominator, remember, it always starts off with a 1 on the bottom. Okay, always. Now, if it was multiplying, you would keep it like that. But because we're dividing, I know I'm going to keep this, change this, and eventually this will flip, so the 1 will be on top. Okay, so this is a special pattern. So that special pattern is x minus 8, x plus 8, all over x plus 2. So this keeps, this changes, and this flips. And then again, I'm just right back to top and bottom. Top, bottom. So the only thing I have left is 1 times x plus 8 over x plus 2. But again, because that's a 1, I really don't need it. So I'm just going to just leave it like that. So that's your answer. Okay, on the bottom here is when we're actually going to start solving them. Now, when we talk about extraneous solutions, there's solutions that will make this undefined. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to find out what would make these undefined. So I know that k can't be, undefined is dividing by 0, so k can't be 2 because 2 minus 2 is 0. And k can also not be 6 because 6 minus 6 is 0. Alright, so what I'm now going to do is I'm going to start solving it. So I can tell that if I factor this, I'm getting the same factors of what's already over here. So this will be my common denominator. So now I just need to make each of these look like that. So here I got k minus 6, so this will be k minus 2. And again, whatever I do on the bottom, I do at the top. That's k minus 2, so it needs a k minus 6. And then whatever I do on the bottom, I do to the top. And nothing happens to that because that's the common denominator. Alright, so now that I have that common denominator, I can actually just cancel all that out. And I'm only focusing on the numerator. So 4 equals k times k minus 6 plus 1 times k minus 2. So if I keep going, that gives me 4 equals k squared minus 6k plus k minus 2. And again, I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to combine like terms. That gives me negative 5k minus 2. And again, because it's a quadratic, anytime it's a quadratic, it has to equal 0. So I need to subtract this over. I'm going to combine it with that negative 2. I'm going to continue my work over here. So that gives me 0 equals k squared minus 5k minus 6. And then I'm going to factor, because that's how you solve. So what two numbers multiply to get negative 6 and combine to get negative 5? I got negative 6 and 1. So k equals 6 and k equals negative 1. Now earlier in the problem we talked about that undefined. And one of the answers that k could not be was 6. So k cannot be this answer. So this is your extraneous solution. But this is your valid answer. Okay, so this is where you find the common denominator. But on 20, you cross multiply. And remember, if you were in my class, we actually practiced that in deciding how we're going to solve them. So I'm going to cross multiply that. So that gives me 8 times x minus 1 equals 2 times 3x minus 2. Okay, so now I'm just going to start just distributing and solving. So 8x minus 8 equals 6x minus 4. I'm going to subtract 6x minus 6x. That gives me 2x minus 8 equals negative 4. And again, just keep moving everything around till you got the variable by itself. And x equals 2. All right, on the back. Okay, we have one more of these type. So on this one here, again, it's all about cross multiplying. So here I would have x plus 2 times x minus 3 equals x times x plus 5. So you're going to distribute. So here I would get x squared minus 3x minus 2x minus 6 equals x squared plus 5x. So I'm going to combine with the like over here. Now, I notice that when I cross that equal sign, things are the opposite. So this x squared will actually cancel out, which means we won't have to factor. So I'm left with negative 5x minus 6 equals 5x. So I'm going to move this 5x to the other side. And that gives you negative 6 equals 10x. I'm going to divide. And I'm going to reduce that. So x equals negative 3 over 5. All right. These are the word problems where you're working alone or working together. So on these, remember, it's really about 1 over time alone plus 1 over time alone equals 1 over time together. So it says Roy and Ryan are building robots for a science project. Ryan built the robot last year by himself in 8 hours. Okay, so Ryan built that by himself, so 1 over 8. So this will be about Ryan. And Roy built his in 6 hours, so 1 over 6. How much time would it take this year if they worked together? So now they're working together, but I don't know how long it's going to take. So depending on how you look at this, you have to find a common denominator because you are adding fractions. Some of y'all will see 24 because 8 times 3 and 6 times 4. But another way to do it is if you just multiply all of it, okay? Now, when you're doing a common denominator, you have to have the x in it. And I'm going to use the 24 because I can tell that 8 times 3 will give me 24 and 6 times 4 will give me 24. All right, so that's my common denominator. So in order to now solve this, I got to make the denominator the same. So to get it to 24x, I'm going to multiply this by 24. Again, whatever you do on the bottom, do the top. I'm going to multiply that by 4x, because again, the common denominator is 24x. And then I'm going to multiply that by 3x. And then again, whatever you do on the bottom, do the top. All right, so I clear the denominator. Choop, gone. So now what I have is, I have 3x plus 4x equals 24. That gives me 7x equals 24, which means x equals 24 over 7. So 24/7 hours, which is roughly 3 3/7. Okay, as far as the equation, that's what I wrote in purple originally. So it would be 1 over 8 plus 1/6 equals 1 over x. Okay, on 25, it says Erica can paint her room in 5 hours. Okay, so that's alone. So 1 over 5. If she has her friend Rachel help her, they can paint the room together in 3 hours. Okay, well, if Rachel's helping her, that means that they're working together. So 1 over 3. How long would it take for Rachel to paint the room alone? So I don't know what Rachel is, so I'm going to do 1 over x. Okay, so again, it's all about a common denominator, because it's like we're adding fractions. I'm just going to multiply all that, and I get 15x. And then it's all about getting the common denominator. So to get to 15x, I'm going to multiply that by 5x. I'm going to multiply that by 15. And then I'm going to multiply that by 3x. Okay, and then I can cancel them out because they're all the same. Okay, so now what I have is, I'm going to have 3x plus 15 equals 5x. And then I'm just going to start solving. And so x equals 15 over 2, or 7.5 hours. All right, so my answer is 7.5 hours. And again, the equation is what I had written in purple. So 1 over 5 plus 1 over x equals 1/3. All right, and there it is. Really make sure you focus on the word problems. There are about 4 or 5 of these on the test. And just ask for help if you need it. All right, thank you very much.